Over the past few years, the Oklahoma Sooners are a team that have become synonymous with offensive success. And last year, defensive coordinator Alex Grinch really started making strides on that Oklahoma defense, and it is paying dividends in the recruiting landscape right now. And a prospect that I want to talk about off the top is Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, because a 5-star defensive tackle to Oklahoma would be huge. But before we get into it, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. So hop down to the comments and give me a Y for yes or an N for no. Do you believe Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy ultimately goes to the University of Oklahoma? And let me know what you're thinking there, because this is going to be a very highly contested battle, but I really like where OU's at right now. And if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification, because I do constant college football content, player reviews, film analysis, talk style videos like this, and I'm on my push to 5,000 subscribers in my first year, and I'd love to have you along. And if you did enjoy this, be sure to like and comment down below. But with all of that out the way, let's talk about some prospects that Oklahoma has really got to feel good about where they are right now. And look, on this channel, we've talked a lot about all of the hype that Steve Sarkisian and the Texas Longhorns are generating, and deservedly so. That's an incredible staff that the Longhorns have put together there, and Sark is one of the better offensive minds in football. But Oklahoma also gets to boast one of the best minds in football for the offensive side of the ball in Lincoln Riley. I mean, his system has been tried and true for years, and the Big 12 has ultimately ran through the Sooners, and it doesn't look to stop this year with how extremely talented the Sooners are. They have to be an easy favorite for the college football playoff and an easy favorite for a national title berth. I mean, that is just how talented this group is. But Alex Grinch's rewards on the defensive side of the football were more than just seen in statistics. If we look at the landscape of college football recruiting right now, the Oklahoma Sooners are in line for a few big defensive prospects. And as I said in the beginning, I want to start it off with Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, a kid who both of his parents came to the University of Oklahoma. So that you have to like your chances with right there. 24/7 Sports has him 100% crystal ball to Oklahoma with some very high predictions there from very reliant people. And I have to agree, the recruiting process has made it seem like OU is in the lead. Now, that doesn't mean that OU needs to just ghost the rest of this recruitment and kind of go on autopilot, right? Clemson is coming very hard at Dindy. Ohio State is coming very hard at Dindy. They are making him a massive priority. And because of that, this is a battle that the Oklahoma Sooners need to win, but I fully expect for them to win. But aside from him even being a legacy to the University of Oklahoma, we need to look at what it would mean for a 5-star defensive lineman of his caliber. This is an individual who stands 6'3", 275 pounds, and if you were to tell me that that guy was 275 pounds, I'd probably laugh at you. And that's not to say he looks small, but he carries very, very good weight. The kind of weight that a college strength and conditioning coach is going to look at and be so excited for him to get in the program, because you can very instantly kind of see dividends in guys like this. Not only is he carrying great weight, he is hyper explosive. There is an absolute reason he's a 5-star in comp to Ed Oliver. This is a guy that the Oklahoma Sooners would love to land, especially with all of the hype that Steve Sarkisian and them are generating right now on the offensive side of the football, but also getting some defensive recruits. And look, Oklahoma Sooners right now have one kid in this class who's on the defensive side of the ball, but he is a top 100 guy. So being able to answer a Texas 5-star quarterback with a top 100 linebacker and then a 5-star defensive tackle, that's a pretty good answer when you look at the offensive class that Oklahoma is putting together right now, which nobody in the nation should be surprised about. And it's not going to stop. As we speak right now, Oklahoma is in the favorite to land the #1 running back in the nation while already having 5-star Raleek Brown, who I poured over on this channel when I talked about him, because I think that he is going to come in and be an instant mismatch with Lincoln Riley. This is a kid who Lincoln Riley, I know, is wishing came out last year, because he's going to be an instant plug-and-play guy because of how many different variable schemes you can put him in. Raleek Brown is going to be a hard guy to keep off the field. But that's not a knock to a Gavin Sawchuck, the #1 running back in the nation in 24/7 Sports for the class of 2022. If he comes in, he's also going to be vying for instant playing time, a guy they have comped to Christian McCaffrey, and OU could land 2 5-star running backs in one class. They're the favorite to land both. DeMarco Murray is doing incredible things, and both have kind of cited the personal nature of recruiting of which they've felt at Oklahoma. Now, Ridley Brown has committed to Oklahoma, Sawchuck has not, but I would expect that soon because his parents were talking about the recruiting process and how even when they went to Georgia, they really liked Georgia, but they didn't feel like a priority there because at Georgia, they had recruiters walking them around, touring them. In Oklahoma, it's always been DeMarco Murray, Lincoln Riley, along with some of the players, and that's really an important thing, and that's a really cool thing to hear. But the five-star bonanza at Oklahoma does not end with Dindy, and it does not end with Sawchuck. In fact, the Oklahoma Sooners are in line for another five-star on the defensive side of the ball, or at least we figure that's what he'll play, in Gentry Williams. He'll probably be a cornerback. The Oklahoma Sooners right now, if they can land Dindy and Gentry Williams, are going to be soaring to a top 5 class in the nation and are going to have a lot to say about that number 2 to 3 class and could be making a run at number 1. Number 1 is going to be hard to catch right now. Ohio State is doing some incredible things. But look, you add in those 2 5-stars and you're right up there with them with the best in the nation. This Oklahoma class has a lot to be excited about. And Oklahoma had a good class last year. Even though falling outside the top 10, they did so because of a lack of recruits. It was actually very impressive that they ranked as high as they did given the low number of recruits they took. And actually, if all things would have been considered equal, if I'm not mistaken, we did the math, they would have been a top 5 class, but by how much, I'm not sure. And if they wouldn't have been, if I'm wrong on that, they were just outside. But a very impressive recruiting class for Oklahoma last year. Being able to get a Gentry Williams will be a bit more dependent, though. Gentry Williams is looking at a few other places, such as LSU and such as USC, establishing a great relationship with the position coach at USC and having a ton of great things to say about Corey Raymond from LSU, who is without a doubt one of the top defensive back coaches in all of the nation, and easily maybe the best defensive back recruiter in all of the nation. I mean, my goodness me, I went through that day listing his 5 stars and it was like a book. I mean, if you look at what he does with cornerbacks, it's spoken for, right? I don't think anybody's surprised if Gentry Williams goes to LSU. I think the favorite is by far and about Oklahoma, make no mistake, Sooners fans, but I think y'all understand what I'm saying. If there's ever a place where a defensive back would go that's kind of like a shock if it was LSU, we have to realize what it is LSU does with defensive backs, and it's really not that much of a shock. But like Dindy, Gentry Williams finds lineage from Oklahoma, and that has to bode well for them. Aside with that, he's got a great relationship with the coaching staff as well. The coaching staff for Oklahoma seems to be doing a great job on the recruiting trail, really prioritizing a lot of guys. That's what you really like to hear. But they're not stopping there because Oklahoma just made the top 7 for a top safety in the nation, Chase Biddle, who right now OU looks to be the favorite to land Biddle. This is a class that is really starting to shape up for the Oklahoma Sooners, and after missing out on the top 10 classes in the nation last year, albeit for reasons that we understand, we talked about, there are nuances to recruiting that I completely understand, and Oklahoma absolutely fell under one of those nuances last year. But this year, I don't think they're going to have to fall under one of those nuances, especially if they can keep recruiting at this level. Because not only have they snagged a 5-star receiver, a 5-star running back, they are in line for another 5-star running back, and maybe in line for a 5-star defensive tackle, and then a 5-star athlete who may play cornerback. You're also in line for a ton of other good guys, such as Biddle, such as Abor. I mean, the list goes on and on. The Oklahoma Sooners are sitting in a very good spot, and you have to imagine that the Texas Longhorns' surgence and hype in recruiting is only going to benefit Oklahoma, but the Big 12 as a whole. It's just that when Oklahoma is Texas' huge rival within the Big 12, they're instantly going to see a bump in effect of recruiting. And I'm not going to say that they weren't great recruiters before, because they absolutely were. We've talked about it here on this channel. That's not my contention here, but you get my contention. Competition breeds a different element, and now that there might be competition with Steve Sarkisian coming to the Big 12, and look, Texas was competitive before Steve Sarkisian. They're always playing OU well. That's always a phenomenal game living in the state of Texas, one to look forward to. But with Steve Sarkisian being there and that Texas staff, they're generating a ton of hype. Now, this is not to say that the OU recruiting world right now is infallible. We talked about for Gentry Williams, you're going to have to fight off LSU. That's going to be a tough pitch. He's got a great relationship with the USC staff. That's going to be a hard one because USC is surging in recruiting right now, but you got to love where you're at because his whole thing is wanting to see the defense progress under Alex Grinch. And if you're an OU fan, and even myself, there's every expectation for me to believe that the defense will continue to progress, especially when you bring in a guy like Billy Bowman, who I talked about is probably too good to keep off the field. And in a similar circumstance with Dindy, you have to fend off Ohio State, you have to fend off Clemson, but the reason you have to like where you are is he's pouring about Oklahoma on these trails. I mean, he poured about Ohio State and Clemson. But, you know, at the end of the day, when both of your parents come from Oklahoma and Oklahoma is showing progress on the defensive front and you can kind of pitch to him, you can be the guy along with a Gentry Williams that really gets this vaunted defense at Oklahoma back in order to contend with these offenses in the Big 12 and really have an answer for them. You get to be a part of that class. That's a tough sell. I'm incredibly interested to see what y'all are thinking, because this Oklahoma Sooners class is looking like it's going to be a special group, and it's crazy because this Oklahoma Sooners group that's about to take the field in the fall looks to be a special group as well. So you have to be excited if you're a Sooners fan, doubling down with what is going to be an incredible season on the field with what will be and what looks to be a super great recruiting class. But I can't wait to hear from y'all, so hop down to the comments and let me know what you're thinking there. That's it. See ya.